The US White House recommends Rust to replace C and C++. Why so? Before I can explain that, I will quickly review what the biggest issues the US federal government is facing in software security and how we got where we are today. On February 26, 2024, the US White House published a report explaining the severity of memory-based vulnerabilities against US spacecraft. As the report points out, for over 35 years, the same kinds of memory vulnerabilities have left US space and aircraft vulnerable to exploit by foreign actors. Throughout history, US machines have faced memory exploits that have taken down entire computer networks, such as the Morris worm of 1988, the Slammer worm of 2003, the Heartbleed vulnerability in Opus SL, and the recent BlastPass exploit chain in 2023. What's interesting is that the US federal government is most concerned about protecting spacecraft from cyber attackers, not what's already on land. Now let's take a step back here. Why is that? If you read documents such as the USSF Commercial Space Strategy and the US Annual Threat Assessment Report, you will notice the US frequently mentions both Russia and China as threats to US spacecraft. The US federal government is most concerned that Russia and China, two nations whose military forces rival that of the US, will become the dominant military force in outer space. If you were to look at the job postings of companies such as SpaceX and Northrop Grumman, you will notice these companies work with the US government to help protect the secrecy of military intelligence, which is a must-have to win any war. Nations such as Russia and China have the manpower and military intelligence to disrupt or forcibly take down US satellites that play this crucial role. And the fact that the US is complaining about memory exploits as a threat is a clear giveaway that memory bugs continue to be one of the biggest security vulnerabilities that the federal government is forced to deal with. According to research reported by the US White House and other companies, including Microsoft, up to 70% of reported vulnerabilities in CVE databases are memory-focused bugs. If the US is so concerned about these bugs, why are we still relying on the same old coding languages that make such vulnerabilities easy to crop up? The answer has to do with legacy support. The C programming language was, and still is, the de facto standard to build production-ready operating systems, the software that allows the hardware and applications of your machine to work together to complete all your tasks. Since C became the de facto standard, writing software that quickly performed critical tasks, like managing your spacecraft, were also written in C and derived languages. The US White House acknowledged that the US and other nations have been using unsafe languages like C and C++ to write our computer networking stacks, our operating systems, and our cryptographic libraries for decades. So although languages such as C and C++ are very easy to accidentally make memory bugs, it is very hard to forego the speed benefits and legacy support it brings. In response to this issue, the CISA has released a report titled The Case for Memory Safe Roadmaps that counsels software development teams to make their code bases to be more secure. To be honest, when I read this report, most of these were secure conceptual guidelines, leaving it to project managers to figure out how to best follow the advice for their project. Since the effectiveness of the advice given in the roadmap is hard to quantify, it will be difficult to estimate how effective it really will be. Most project managers will probably not be able to take the advice into action. One of the worst pieces of advice the article gave was to bring university CS education up to date with modern software security. If you are a CS student or have a degree in CS, when was the last time your instructors educated you in software security? That's right, never. Even the writers of the roadmap are aware of this unfortunate fact. Is it any wonder that there has been little to no improvement in software security? We are not taking the time to train younger software developers in the secure coding habits that prevent the software bugs the US White House recently complained about this past year. The CISA roadmap and the US White House claim the most promising defense in the meantime is using a memory-safe language such as Rust. The compilers of these languages are designed to catch or altogether make such bugs impractical. To the CISA's credit, languages such as Rust are designed to prevent four recurring problems in languages such as software crashes due to memory vulnerabilities. It is common for applications written in unsafe languages such as C and C++ to crash thanks to Stack Overflow errors. Memory bugs. Remember that 70% of reported vulnerabilities are memory bugs, so less memory bugs means less wasted time finding and resolving such bugs. Arbitrary code execution. Memory bugs can allow cyber attackers to perform unauthorized execution of their software on victim machines. Once an attacker succeeds in this, they can often execute any program they want on your machine, including gaining a root access shell. And finally, concurrency vulnerabilities. Deadlocks and race conditions can cause servers to crash, destroying a web service. All of these are valid points the CISA has brought up. And with saying there's a bunch of advice the CISA gives that I find unrealistic. Even the CISA report admits C and C++ are unfortunately the most common languages in use, and that's why most employers want candidates that are trained in C and C++. However, those same companies often do not pay attention to secure coding practices for these languages. such as the Cert-C coding standard, since it's a major time commitment to learn without any profit. Most universities nor businesses train their employees in secure coding for this reason. However, the CISA's recommendation will not change universities' minds about their curriculum either. As long as universities can boast their graduates get hired at prestigious companies, that's good enough for them. Most professors that are trained in C and C++ would have to accept the burden of learning the new memory-safe language such as Rust. It takes years to be proficient enough at a language to satisfy industry demands. To further illustrate why asking developers to switch to Rust will be difficult, let's consider how attempts to integrate Rust code into GNU Linux is going. GNU Linux project is the largest free software project in the world. Throughout history, the GNU Linux kernels have been written in C, just like any other operating system. Recently, GNU Linux developers have attempted to upload Rust kernel code. Rust for Linux is the official name of the community project to add support for the Rust language in the GNU Linux kernel. Like the US White House has said, this is being done to reduce the kernel's attack surface. However, most kernel developers do not know Rust, and are, for now at least, not willing to learn it. Veteran C developers have become so defensive on insisting the kernel continues to be developed in C that Linus admits the Rust versus C debate has become a political debate. Linus admits this may be because Rust is more complex of a language to grasp than C, which is famous as a terse yet powerful language. The language wars for GNU Linux have become so heated that even prominent developers have quit. Wedson Almeida, a Microsoft engineer, quit the project after getting tired with the other Linux developers' reluctance to make the change to Rust. A fellow developer, Asahi Lina, admits it seems developers are not concerned with the security benefits Rust offers and are mostly attached to the language they grow up with coding. A hidden downside developers have discovered in switching to Rust is the necessity to revise documentation that has already been published in the past. Switching to a language requires one to change how they approach solving a problem, and this in turn requires a change in how the code works. And, therefore, a change in how to explain how the code works. Yosef Bahisik, a developer on Linux virtual file system, had to revise 65 pages of documentation on the file system for reasons like this. There is a major problem with that, and that is no one can earn a living just writing documentation. If you want to earn a living on the GNU Linux project, code, not just document. This is why GNU Linux kernel documentation was, and already is, esoteric before the transition to Rust began. And now, with the switch to Rust, developers are challenged to decipher legacy Linux code and to document it more lucidly for incoming Rust developers. This is why Joel Spolsky said you should never rewrite your codebase from scratch, ever. To understand why, look at what happened to Netscape. It cost them their business. I will simply quote what Joel said in that article. When you throw away code and start from scratch, you are throwing away all that knowledge, all those collected bug fixes, years of programming work. It's important to remember that when you start from scratch, there is absolutely no reason to believe that you are going to do a better job than you did the first time. You're just going to make the most of the old mistakes again, introduce some new problems that weren't in the original version. Since it's mentally painful to reread someone else's legacy code, who may or may not be available for contact, we can now start to see why many developers are resisting Rust like a firewall. It's a hassle to learn how someone else thinks. Allow me to be clear. I am not saying Rust should never exist in GNU Linux. It should, to reduce the attack surface as the White House recommended. But thinking that most of the GNU Linux legacy code should be replaced with Rust code is a dangerous mistake. It can cost Linux its legacy. Recently, software developers have begun using AI tools to solve software issues for them. For now, AI is not yet advanced enough to audit our source code for us. It's just a tool to help an experienced auditor do their job. I am not saying we'll never be able to source audits independently, but for now, AI gives far too many false reports of insecure code to be efficient. What's tricky about using AI is that computers are engineered to comply with Boolean logic, but real humans make irrational decisions. It's part of being human. Despite AI's imperfections, the AI market hype is real. In a statistical survey by Snike, many developers have practiced using AI tools to help audit their source code. Unfortunately, people trust the AI too much. In the survey by Snike, out of 535 teams, 97% of teams attempted to use AI tools. The allure is simple. AI tools advertise less development time to launch software-based products. But as they say, there is an inverse relationship between speed and security. 91.6% of the respondents in Snike's survey admitted the AI tools gave wrong advice in some cases. This is why respected Q&A forums to help developers, such as Stack Overflow, have banned answers using tools such as ChatGPT. For now, the accuracy of the AI tools is too low to be safe to use. Researchers from prestigious universities such as Stanford and New York University have drawn similar conclusions. Despite scientific reports such as these, SNIKE reports 75.8% of people interviewed actually believe AI-generated code is more secure than handmade code. And the ironic truth is, the respondents in SNIKE's survey believe this, even though 56.4% of them admit identifying flaws in the code suggested by the AI. Companies acknowledge this bias and have standardized policies restricting the extent to which developer staff is allowed to rely on AI tech. Even worse, 79.9% of developers often break their company's policy. Laziness and speed of development time trump good security sense. Yes, the average public has no software security sense. Do not trust popular opinion when it comes down to digital security. You will get shot. At this point, AI is simply allowing developers to finish their code faster, to say nothing on whether their code is correct, let alone secure. If you are reading this, you may have heard of the free software, open source software movements. A common advertised benefit of open source or free software is that since the software is available to the public, it has received much more scrutiny than closed source software. I'm sorry to break it to you, that's not true. The work Building Secure Software in Chapter 4 admits that just because a software's repository is open source, it does not mean people will take the time to review the source code. The book sums up the problem with open source software better than I can. Because of the economic incentives, people often trust that projects that are open source are likely to have received scrutiny and are therefore secure. When developers write open source software, they usually believe that people are diligently checking the security of their code, and for this reason come to believe it is becoming more and more secure over time. Unfortunately, this bad reasoning causes people to spend less time worrying about security in the first place. Usually, people that take the time to read your code only do it for two reasons. Tweak the code to do what you want, but that doesn't mean they cared about security the entire time. Remember, buffer overflows continue to plague code bases, source available or not, to this day. By now, you should understand the severity of the situation. Far too much software that the world relies on is notoriously insecure and would be too burdensome or risky to rewrite it in a memory-safe language. Your developers will most likely not be willing to take the time and energy to learn the new memory-safe language of the decade, even though it would make the project more secure, because that's a big ask. You can learn the syntax of any language. However, getting the logic across is the hard part. Your development team will most likely not audit the codebase or even care about security in the first place. AI is not as effective for software security as advertised for now, and just because you slapped your code with a free software license does not grant it the status secure. So what do we do? Software developers are increasingly applying formal verification to ensure their source code is secure. Formal verification is the act of mathematically proving one's software is correct. Its history in modern software development begins with the invention of the meta-language programming language. As the author Michael R. Clarkson points out, ML was invented to prove mathematical theorems. ML influenced several languages, OCaml being the most used in the industry. Software developers have used OCaml to develop tools to prove software is secure against common security exploits. Companies such as Amazon, Cloudflare, Google, and others have written programs to formally verify their software is secure. Cryptographic developers rely on formal verification tools to ensure their cryptographic software is safe from cracking. One OCaml project known as Mirage OS challenged hackers around the world to hack its unikernel implementation, promising a stash of Bitcoin hidden in the unikernel as a reward. No hacker ever succeeded in hacking through the formally verified software. Formal verification is perhaps the only practical scientific technique to automate or partially audit legacy codebases. The list of industries that have used it in their commercial projects is a testament to that. The OCaml language currently is a foundation for developing software that can be mathematically proven to be secure. This is the language that COQ, a famous software for proving mathematical theorems, is written in. Throughout history, many tech companies have used tools such as COQ and OCaml to verify their software is secure against known attacks. Jane Street is one of the most famous advocates of OCaml for software security. TrustedSoft is a company that offers software to audit your C and C++ code for common security bugs. Allowing formal verification tools to help do the dirty work of finding security bugs saves everyone time and hassle of having to source audit their code bases manually. Remember, your organization's codebase grows larger with time, not shorter, so it's unreasonable to think the burden of security developers to review their source code gets easier with time. Software tools designed to help verify that software is secure is a reasonable solution. There are a few downsides to this. Few people invest the time and energy to learn formal verification, yet companies continue to invest in such talent. So there's a growing market for it. It is my suspicion that people will ignore the White House's advice to switch to memory-safe languages. Rust does not account for the fact your organization already has a bunch of legacy code that is difficult to replace. Instead, Instead, a more viable solution is to invent software tools to verify such software is secure. If you liked watching this video and you are a security engineer that is interested in software security, please consider liking and subscribing to this channel. I appreciate the help, and I look forward to making more videos like this. Let me know what you think in the comments. Peace.